fiscal situation there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mohammed. Not just a champion of agriculture, a farmer myself. And so I empathize with my country's farmers. For many years, Africa has relied on smallholder peasant agriculture at the expense of medium-scale to large-scale agriculture. Peasant farmers grow enough to feed their families for the year. And if it just happens that there's excess food, they go and sell it on the market, buy some other items that they need. The time has come to see agriculture as a business. Unfortunately, the Green Revolution bypassed Africa. And so Africa still has some of the most extensive arable lands, but that are not yet being put to productive use. Unfortunately, there's an intersection of what I just talked about and climate change. And so, for instance, the year before last, I have a farm that is about 400 hectares. And we grow soybean, we grow yellow maize, mostly for the poultry industry. We planted and the crops came out very beautifully, nicely. And just at the critical time, the rain stopped for 10 weeks. And I just watched the crops wilt. And so we need to adapt our agricultural practices to the new reality. And that means that we must put more land under irrigation. Poor farmers are not going to be able to afford the kind of cost it takes to put land under irrigation. So that's where government comes in. And that's why my government has embarked on a very, ambitious program of introducing irrigation, but not just any irrigation that is appropriate and affordable to the farmer. And so, for instance, if you go put some huge pumps connected to the national electricity grid, the farmers cannot pay the tariffs for pumping that water. So more solar water pumps, improved seeds, good extension advice, and especially developing the agribusiness sector, because it's not enough to ask the farmers to produce. You need to have an offtake for their production. And if you don't develop the agribusiness sector, the farmers find themselves, cropping, producing, harvesting, and there's nobody to buy. Recently, we've suffered a maize glut in Ghana, and maize prices dropped to 350 cedis a bag, which is below the production of a cost of a bag of maize. And so government had to come into the market, introduce a minimum guaranteed price, and say that any farmer who wants to sell his maize at 450 cedis, the National Buffer Stock Company will buy it. And so minimum guaranteed price, it's a whole complex of things that you need in order that you can have sustainable agriculture that produces enough food at an affordable price to be able to feed your citizens.
Does the spending that the government do on that, and in a sense subsidizing the crop, how do you make that back?
I think it's a public good. For instance, in Ghana, we subsidize the cost of fertilizers in order to increase output. We subsidize the cost of improved seeds in order that the farmers can have access to good seeds. When we started supplying seeds to farmers, there was a case in which one farmer had used the same seed for 20 years. He was barely making 1 bag of maize per acre. And so you need to give him good seeds that give him 20 bags an acre, 10 times what he gets from using the old seeds. And because the seeds are expensive, government has to come in a way to subsidize them. Yeah.
We need to be
Mr. President, please.
Yes, I just wanted to add, international resource mobilization for education is important. But more important is domestic resource mobilization. Ghana has performed well in terms of its budgetary allocation to education because at a point in time we realized that education was the key sector, to Ghana's progress and development. And so as a nation, we took a decision that we will all contribute on everything we purchase 2.5%, a value-added tax. That goes into what we call the Ghana Education Trust Fund. And so that fund alone is able to mobilize sufficient revenue to almost hit the 20% mark. And so additional allocation from the national budget makes us easily overcome the 20% target. And so domestic mobilization is important. Of course, we're getting some support from USAID and all that. But, I mean, we should recognize the fact that I wish His Excellency Kwekete well in their replenishment, but the reality is that that kind of resource is dwindling. And I was an ambassador at the last Gavi replenishment. The target was for 11 billion. They did well. They were able to raise 9 billion. But I'm just telling you, don't be too optimistic. The world of today does not have the kind of funding, and the mood is not there to fund these kinds of programs. And so I believe that while we rely on boosting education in these developed countries, through these kinds of mechanisms, we must look at mechanisms locally that enable us to contribute to our own children's